So, Casper Schlikum from Xaxis within GroupM. I gather, so Xaxis is the data-centric, the programmatic specialist within GroupM, a very large group. Could you expand on that and tell us what you do?
Sure. I mean, I think the best way of explaining what we do is that we buy audiences. There's been, and I think really interestingly, a lot of discussion today about, I'm not a cookie, I'm a person, and the idea of how people are different from just data points and how data points define people. All media planners are trying to reach an audience, right? And historically and currently they still do and do very effectively reach that audience through selecting sites or channels or whatever it happens to be that infer or imply that that audience will be reached. We sort of turn that on its head. We use data and technology to serve an ad to an audience regardless of where they are. So by that I mean in a lot of cases now, regardless of which device they're on, that might be a mobile, it might be a tablet, it might be a PC, and at some point hopefully it might be addressable TV as well, right. Something which we're very excited about, but as we've already heard is quite underdeveloped in the European region certainly, or it might be across different ad formats. So whether that's a banner ad or increasingly in our case also of course the importance of video.
So you said you're selling ads to users regardless of which property they're on. So you're the guy eating publishers' lunch, aren't you? You disintermediate them?
No, we definitely don't disintermediate publishers. The relationship we have with publishers is one that is very, very important for us. It's as important for us as the relationship we have with our advertisers. We can't do what we do without both. Many of our advertisers, and this is not just a sort of a story, but it's factually borne out by by the proportion of the spend that we represent, want to work with certain publishers directly. And that's something which we don't facilitate. That's something that the media agencies facilitate for them and do extremely well. The area where we come in is helping them monetize that inventory and help them also monetize audiences, which they're not doing directly with the media agencies. So our experience and looking at all the publishers we work with, which is very extensive across the region, is that that's not happening.
So, do you agree with this assessment? So there's obviously like a crisis around the banner ad and the efficiency there. Click-through is what, sub 0.1% at the moment. And that's kind of sent the industry, I think, in two different directions on the spectrum, and one of which is towards programmatic and wringing more efficiency out of that. And then on the other end, some people are moving toward content marketing or sponsored content, a softer kind of approach to marketing. What happens in the space that's been vacated between those 2 points?
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting question. I mean, first of all, I don't think that the two are necessarily diverging as much as you've kind of implied there. Both have a very important role. Performance marketing is a very important part of media at the bottom of the funnel, and the softer, if you want to call it that, I don't think there's anything soft about it actually. I think it's it's a very, very important part of the media buy, the sort of more content, contextual driven, sort of brand aligned kind of buy at the top of the funnel around prospecting and creating awareness and engagement and all that sort of thing is also very important. But I don't think the two exist independently of one another. I think if I look at the way that we do both sides of that, and we play in both spaces, attribution modeling and understanding the journey that people go through as they go from one to the other one is very important for us and our advertisers. But also, there's nothing to stop us targeting and buying audiences the way we do at the bottom of the funnel, at the top of the funnel. The only difference might be the availability of data points. And I think, I can't remember who, but someone was talking about the fact that obviously once you get to the bottom of the funnel, there are many more data points available through which you can specify your audience because you've had some sort of interaction with them before. Yeah. So at the top of the funnel, you're thinking more about demographics and maybe sort of certain interest categories, et cetera, but it's still audience targeting.
Yeah, so content marketing is happening, but maybe it's labor intensive because it requires those pesky humans to author the content and sell that sponsorship. There are some startups out there trying to kind of create a network for content marketers, a network of sponsored content to sell it in a market like that. How far away from that do you think we are, and would that work?
Yeah, I mean, I think it depends on the type of content buy you're doing. There is always going to be a role for pesky humans, and pesky humans are actually very good at those sorts of things, because ultimately what you're trying to drive here is engagement, right? And machines can't tell you what's going to be engaging, what isn't going to be engaging, and when it's going to be engaging. So, I'm never somebody who will say that the programmatic opportunities that new technology are providing us is going to take over the world. You know, I think it has a role to play. I think it's a very important role. It's a very exciting role, but it complements what's already there. And what it does do is it frees up resource, because, you know, in the past, pesky humans were doing a lot of things that frankly were very process driven. They were super boring and very repetitive, and therefore lots of mistakes were made. And, you know, that's the sort of thing that, you know, no media planner in their right mind wants to do. So I think it's a way of, the two things are complementary to one another.
Right. And when it comes to the two-screen opportunity, we spoke earlier about how people are using mobile devices whilst consuming TV. What does that mean for you? Where's the opportunity there?
Well, I mean, I think it's a great opportunity. I think it's something which, you know, unfortunately, it is just that still, you know. I mean, I'm loving some of the things that, you know, we had a conversation with Shazam the other day around what they're doing in terms of picking up sound from TVs and all that sort of thing. I mean, I think there are awesome opportunities there about aligning the two. I think it's interesting that people do tend to be doing very different things on their mobile device when they're watching a TV show, and it sort of replaced the magazine, which I thought was a really interesting way of describing that. It's sort of, you know, if I think about my own experience, that's sort of what's happened. So I think it's a great opportunity. We're not doing much of it at the moment, but, you know.
So we're looking into the future on this panel a little bit. What are the kind of advertising technologies that you see coming, or the online platforms that could be leveraged for advertising and for perhaps particularly programmatic advertising? I mean, we see people going on to Twitter. Publicis had a big deal this week. Thinking beyond Twitter, are there platforms beyond Twitter that can be leveraged effectively for advertising? We know there's this video sharing platform called Vine. Do you see that being usable? Look,
I mean, there are so many ad tech ideas and solutions and platforms and thoughts and concepts, and, you know, it's really, you know, if you think about how any of those or whether any of those is going to scale sufficiently, it's very difficult to pick a winner, right? If I sort of think about our approach, and if I turn your question around slightly, you know, what's a risk for this whole industry in terms of what sits in the future? You know, we're trying to create a single view of an audience across multiple platforms. That for us is the ideal. That's the holy grail of, like, you know, having that single view of a user that is enriched with data from all the different sources, obviously in a very non-personal sort of way. And I think that's where the problem is. I think, you know, one of the big issues we have, and one of the things which is potentially blocking the extent to which some of those new technologies may have a role to play in that kind of world, is the regulatory environment. And I think a lot of them don't understand just how much of a threat the regulatory environment potentially is for them right now, and how much of a constraint it's going to be on some of the opportunities.
Okay, thanks. So if we open it out to everyone else and ask what's next, maybe Ryan, I mentioned Vine. It's a specific platform, but is there an opportunity around that? You know, we're familiar with the 30-second ad spot. What about the, what is it, 6 or 7 second ad spot? 6?
You know, time will tell whether there's an opportunity. I would say, you know, from what we've seen, and again, kind of the big marketing dollars of the world tend to flow from television, and there are some very powerful reasons why. It's very evocative. It's very emotional. It's quite engaging. It's the best single reach mechanism out there. We don't see that changing. We don't see that, in many ways, doing anything but continuing to, you know, proliferate. We actually see the performance improving. So does that one need to be kind of, you know, upended by a 6-second version, which probably doesn't have a lot of those same characteristics? I think it probably has a place. I don't think it's the exact same place.
Okay.
I think that's right. On the other hand, you know, we are seeing services like YouTube, you know, which is all about short form content, getting increasing traction, and, you know, and a 30-second ad does not work in front of a 2-minute clip. So I think that there's clearly a role, as you say. I mean, it's all about scale in the end. You know, it might be small, but it's certainly got a role to play. I think those kind of new formats, new ideas, you know, doing things differently. That's what, you know, kind of part of what the internet is all about.
Well, Norm, what are you and your clients finding about the sweet spot when it comes to YouTube pre-rolls?
Well, I think I think the big change of the last year or so with YouTube is professional content. I think the big concern before was it was Casper's cat playing piano, and, you know, I think a lot of brands really struggle with, you know, do we want to be associated with that sort of content? And I think with, as much as we love Casper's cat, I think with you know, the YouTube professional content coming on board, and, you know, some of these are quite sizable now. They've got, you know, huge subscriber base. it's a lot easier to buy within the YouTube environment. And then I think, the clever things such as the True View helps as well. You only pay if somebody actually watches the video. So there's a performance element that's quite attractive. So one of the biggest discussions we have, every market, every client, is the migration of TVC to online. They're all interested. There's no argument. It's just a question of how much and where, and how do they make sure that that it enhances and complements what they're doing within TV. So I think there's a huge opportunity there.
And I'd build on what Norm said. I mean, let's be clear, the rules that dictate the video space couldn't be more different than the rules that dictate the display space or the search space. The display and the search space, you have infinite supply, literally infinite. In the video space, it tends to be very high quality and very low supply. So the production of original content by YouTube, the production of House of Cards by Netflix, propagation of content, the limitation of content is the single biggest constraint on that shift.
Yes.
The propagation of content by all these new players who are producing content is a massive opportunity. I agree with you. That's the bottleneck. It is the bottleneck to this market growing. That's why, I mean, for companies like ours, we see things like this as the best thing in the world. Google doubling down and saying they're going to reinvest again $150, $160 million in original content. One of our big investors, Comcast, dipping into their back library and releasing all kinds of NBC content around the world. These are great things. These are great things for marketers, big consumer packaged good marketers who don't want to be next to cats playing piano.